They tore my clothes off in front of everyone, calling me a gold digger and saying I didn't deserve their son. My mother-in-law laughed while I stood there, frozen, with shame and pain burning through my skin. What no one knew was that my father was watching everything and was about to show them who I truly was. Stay until the end, because the revenge my father carried out will leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happened next. But before I continue with my story, tell me from which country you're watching us. It's important for me to know how far our stories travel. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Sophia, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones who hurt you the most. I also learned that justice can come in ways you never imagine. I was a simple girl from a small Texas town when I met Daniel. We were both business students at the university. He was charming, attentive, and made me laugh like no one else. I fell in love fast and hard. A year later, we got married in a small ceremony. It seemed perfect, or so I thought. Daniel came from a wealthy family. The Harises had old money, the kind that comes with expectations and judgment. I didn't care. I loved Daniel for who he was, not for what he had. What his family didn't know, not even Daniel himself, was that I also came from a wealthy family. Real money, the kind that would make the Harises look like they were just playing dress up. My father, Mr. Richard Bennett, is a self-made businessman. He built his empire from the ground up, and I grew up surrounded by private jets and endless possibilities. But I also saw how people treated him, smiles on their faces while secretly calculating what they could get from him. I learned early that many friendships and relationships come with hidden price tags. When I turned 18, I made a decision. I changed my last name, moved far away, and began living a simple life. I wanted real love, love that had nothing to do with bank accounts or business deals. My dad understood. He always respected my decisions, even when they worried him. But he asked me for one thing: if I ever truly needed him, I should call. I promised. And for 2 years, I kept that promise locked away, determined to make my marriage work on my own terms. Daniel's family made that almost impossible from the very first day. His mother, Mrs. Patricia Harris, looked at me as if I were something stuck to her designer shoe. She never missed a chance to remind me that I didn't belong, and that I wasn't good enough for her son. She made me serve tea to her friends and introduced me as the girl Daniel married, never by my name. She criticized my clothes, my hair, even the way I spoke. Nothing I did was ever right. Daniel's father, Mr. Albert Harris, simply ignored me. He could walk into a room and look right through me, as if I didn't exist. Sometimes that hurt even more than Mrs. Harris's open cruelty. At least she acknowledged my existence, even if it was only to tear me down. And then there was Victoria, Daniel's younger sister. Probably the worst of them all, because she smiled while twisting the knife. She'd compliment my dress, then whisper to her friends that it looked cheap. She'd invite me to lunch and spend the entire time talking about how Daniel could have married anyone, how many beautiful and rich women wanted him. The message was clear: I should feel grateful they tolerated me. Still, I tried. I truly did, with all my heart. I thought that if I was patient and kind, one day they would see who I really was. I thought love would be enough. Daniel kept telling me not to worry, that his family would change, but he never defended me. He only repeated that I needed to try harder, that's just how they are. 2 years went by like that, me swallowing my pride, enduring disrespect, pretending everything was fine. When our second anniversary came, Mrs. Harris insisted on throwing a party. Not for us, but to show off to her friends, to prove her son had a perfect life, even if, in her eyes, his wife was unfortunate. I wanted to refuse, but Daniel convinced me. Maybe it's her way of accepting you, he said. I should have known better. The party was held at the Harris estate, and Mrs. Harris spared no expense. When I arrived that night, I couldn't believe what I saw. Crystal chandeliers everywhere, each one probably worth more than most people's houses. A live orchestra playing classical music. Champagne fountains with bottles whose names I couldn't even pronounce. Ice sculptures, towers of imported flowers, and a red carpet leading to the entrance, where photographers waited. There were over 200 guests, not friends or family, but magnates, celebrities, and politicians, the kind of people who matter in high society. Women covered in diamonds, wearing gowns that cost more than a car. Men in tailored suits and watches worth a child's college tuition. Rows of luxury cars lined the long driveway, coordinated by valet staff. And there I was, in my simple cream-colored dress bought on sale. I had thought it looked pretty when I chose it, but surrounded by all that excess, I felt foolish. I felt the stares, heard the whispers, "That's her. That's who Daniel married. Poor thing, she's so out of place." Mrs. Harris found me within minutes, smiling sharply. "Oh, Sophia, you came. How quaint you look." Victoria laughed beside her, dazzling in a silver gown that probably cost more than I'd spent on clothes in my entire life. "We're so glad you could make it to your own party," she said sweetly. "Poison wrapped in sugar." As soon as we arrived, Mr. Harris pulled Daniel aside to discuss business with important men, leaving me alone, trying to disappear and counting the hours until the nightmare ended. And then things got worse. The orchestra had just finished a piece when Mrs. Harris took the microphone for a toast. She thanked everyone for coming and said a few words about family and love that made me laugh inwardly at the irony. Then she clutched her neck dramatically. My necklace, my pink diamond necklace. It was gone. The room fell silent. 200 people stopped talking, eating, and drinking. Everyone stared as she clutched her bare neck dramatically. "Someone has stolen my necklace," she announced, raising her voice. "That pink diamond is worth about $2 million, and it was here an hour ago." My blood ran cold. I knew what was coming before she even said it. Mrs. Harris's eyes locked on mine from across the ballroom. "Sophia," she said, my name dripping like an accusation, "you were in my dressing room. I saw you." 200 eyes turned toward me. I felt like I couldn't breathe. "I was just looking for the bathroom," I managed to say. "I didn't take anything. I swear." Victoria appeared beside her mother. "She's lying. I saw her near the jewelry box too. She looked suspicious." "This is absurd," I said, my voice trembling. "Why would I steal from you? I don't even want your necklace." "You don't want it?" Mrs. Harris shot back, her tone icy. "Everyone knows you married my son for money. From the start, you've been after our fortune. This only proves what you really are, a common thief." The ballroom erupted in murmurs. Phones came out, people started recording. I looked for Daniel, desperate. I found him standing beside Mr. Albert. "Daniel, please, tell them I would never do something like that." He looked at me, and for a moment, I thought he was going to defend me. Then he looked at his mother, his father, and all those people watching, and said nothing. Mr. Albert stepped forward. "Search her right now, here in front of everyone. If she's innocent, she has nothing to hide." I froze when I heard him say those words. If she's innocent, she has nothing to hide. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You can't be serious," I whispered, but one look at their faces told me they meant every word. Mrs. Harris and Victoria moved toward me like predators. I stepped back, but there was nowhere to go. 200 people formed a circle around us, phones raised, recording every second of my humiliation. What happened next will haunt me forever. Mrs. Harris grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails dug into my skin. "If you don't cooperate, we'll do it the hard way. Please," I begged through tears, "don't do this, please, don't take anything." But they didn't care about my pleas. Victoria seized my other arm, and the two of them began pulling at my dress. I tried to cover myself, but they were 2 against 1, and I was trembling so badly I could barely stand. I felt the zipper slide down. I screamed, trying to hold the fabric against my body, but Mrs. Harris yanked hard. The dress fell to my feet, and I stood there, in the middle of that massive ballroom, wearing only my underwear, under the spotlight that had once lit up the celebration. 200 people stared. 200 cameras recorded. The orchestra had stopped playing. The only sounds were my sobs and the clicks of cameras capturing my destruction. Mrs. Harris picked up my dress, shook it, tore it apart looking for something, checking every pocket. "Nothing," she finally said, "but that doesn't mean she didn't hide it somewhere else." "This is insane," I cried, hugging myself. "I didn't take your necklace." "Get her out of here," ordered Mr. Albert to the security guards. "Remove this thief from our property." 2 large men approached. I searched for Daniel with my eyes, begging him silently to do something, anything. He stood frozen, pale. He didn't say a word, he turned his back on me and walked away. That moment broke something inside me. It wasn't the humiliation or the false accusations, it was seeing the man I loved choose his family's approval over my dignity. The guards grabbed my arms and dragged me through the crowd. People stepped aside as if I were contagious. Some shouted insults, "Gold digger, thief, trash." I heard them all as they dragged me through that mansion, up marble stairs, past chandeliers and flowers, so much beauty hiding such terrible ugliness. They threw me out through the front door and slammed it behind me. I fell onto the cold ground, trembling in my underwear. My whole body trembled with sobs. Inside, the party went on. I heard the music start again, the laughter. They had already moved on. My humiliation was just another form of entertainment for them, a story to tell at their next gathering. A young valet, barely 20, saw me and ran over with his jacket. He placed it over my shoulders without saying a word. His kind eyes, that small act of compassion, made me cry even harder. I stayed there, on the cold ground, wrapped in a stranger's jacket, realizing I had nothing left, no dignity, no husband, no home to return to. My purse was still inside, along with my phone. I had nothing, except for a promise I'd made to my father. With trembling hands, I borrowed the valet's phone and dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang twice before I heard his familiar voice. "Dad?" My voice cracked. "Dad, I need you. I need you right now." "Where are you, sweetheart?" he asked, alarmed and worried. I could hear his quickened breathing, his footsteps, the urgency in his voice. Through tears, I told him everything, where I was, what had happened, how they had stripped me in front of everyone. I told him about the false accusations, Daniel's silence, how they had treated me like garbage. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then his voice changed. It was cold, controlled, furious. "Don't move," he said. "I'm coming." And then, with terrifying calm, he added, "They have no idea what's about to happen to them." He hung up. The young valet stayed beside me, silent. "Was that your father?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "He'll be here soon." 15 minutes later, the night exploded with light and noise. First came the cars, 10 black luxury SUVs and limousines entering the Harris estate like a presidential motorcade. Then a helicopter appeared, its spotlight flooding the grounds as if it were daytime. Inside, the music stopped again. People rushed to the windows, pointing, trying to understand what was happening. The door of the central limousine opened, and my father stepped out. Mr. Richard Bennett doesn't just enter a place, he commands it. At 60, he was still imposing, tall, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, with eyes that could freeze anyone with a single glance. He wore a suit probably worth more than the entire Harris celebration. His very presence radiated power. Behind him came 20 security men, all in black suits, moving in perfect sync. 5 lawyers with briefcases followed, and beside him walked Detective Robert Collins, stern and official. News helicopters began to circle above. Someone had alerted the media. Later, I learned that someone had been my father himself. He made sure every network knew something major was about to go down at the Harris estate. The doors opened wide. The guards who had thrown me out stepped back, realizing the power that had just arrived. My father walked toward me. The fury in his eyes melted into concern when he saw me sitting there, still in my underwear, wrapped in a stranger's jacket. He took off his own coat, one that cost about $50,000, and draped it over me. Then he helped me up. "I'm here now, sweetheart," he murmured tenderly. Then he turned toward the mansion, and his voice thundered like lightning. "Who among you dared to touch my daughter?" From the open doors, I could see the chaos inside. Everyone was trying to see what was happening. Mrs. Harris appeared in the doorway beside Mr. Albert, both confused and irritated by the interruption. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Mr. Albert. "This is a private party. You're trespassing on private property." My father smiled, not a pleasant smile. "Ah, do not worry, Mr. Harris. Let's go in and talk about it, shall we? I'm sure your guests will want to hear what I have to say." He walked forward and the crowd parted for him like water. I walked beside him, wrapped in his coat, feeling safer than I had in 2 years. His security team fanned out around us, the lawyers followed, and Detective Robert Collins walked beside us. We moved through the mansion as if it belonged to us. In a way, it did. My father took the microphone from the stunned Mrs. Harris's hands. 200 rich and powerful people looked at him, trying to guess who he was. Some of the older guests began to recognize him. I could see astonishment on their faces. "Good evening," he said in a calm, steady voice. "Allow me to introduce myself properly. I am Mr. Richard Bennett. Perhaps some of you have heard of me. Bennett Global Corporation. About $50 billion in assets." Murmurs filled the room. Everyone knew Bennett Global Corporation, one of the largest conglomerates in the world, with investments in technology, real estate, and banking. My father continued, bringing me closer to his side. "This woman you humiliated. This woman you stripped and degraded in front of 200 people. This woman you called a thief and a gold digger, she is my daughter. My only daughter. My heir." The air filled with gasps. Mrs. Harris's face went white. Mr. Albert Harris looked as if he might faint. Daniel stood frozen in the crowd, mouth open in shock. "Sophia came from more wealth than any of you will see in your life," my father said. "But she was looking for something money cannot buy, to be loved for who she is, not for what she has. That is why she changed her name, lived modestly, and believed she had found a man who would value her. Instead, she found you." The screens that had been showing happy photos of Daniel and me switched instantly when my father snapped his fingers. New images filled the room, pictures of me as a child on a yacht, at our estate, at charity galas alongside my father. Then official documents appeared, my birth certificate, trust papers, and certificates, all proving who I really was. Silence took over the ballroom. 200 people watched, their expressions shifting from curiosity to horror. They understood what they had witnessed. They had watched the daughter of a billionaire be stripped and humiliated, and they had recorded it. They had laughed. They had been part of it. "Now," my father said in a low, icy voice, "let's talk about what comes next." He turned to his security team. "Show them." The screens changed again. This time footage from the mansion's security system appeared. In that moment I did not understand where those cameras had come from, but later I learned my father had installed them months earlier. He had been protecting me from a distance, waiting for the moment he would need them. The first video showed Victoria entering Mrs. Harris's dressing room hours before the party. She looked around nervously, then opened her mother's jewelry box, took out the pink diamond necklace, and put it in her bag. The second video showed her in the garden, hiding the necklace under a rose bush. The third was the most damning. It showed Mrs. Harris and Victoria together in a private room. The audio was clear. "Are you sure about this?" Victoria asked. "Completely," her mother answered. "We will accuse her of stealing the necklace. We will search her in front of everyone. We will humiliate her so much that Daniel will have no choice but to divorce her. Then we will finally be rid of that leech." Hundreds of guests watched in stunned silence as the conspiracy unfolded on the screen. They saw Victoria steal the necklace. They saw the two of them planning my destruction. They saw everything. When the videos ended, my father turned to them. "Would you like to explain this?" he asked slowly. Victoria collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I'm so sorry, it was my mother's idea." "You little liar," Mrs. Harris managed to say before realizing everyone was looking at her. The phones that had recorded my humiliation were now recording theirs. Outside, news helicopters broadcast live to the whole city. Within hours, the story would be international news. Mr. Albert stepped forward, trying to regain control. "Mr. Bennett, perhaps we could speak in private. I'm sure we can reach some kind of arrangement." "Arrangement?" my father repeated, letting out a cold laugh. "Oh, Mr. Harris, we are far from that. When my daughter married your son, I did what any good father would do. I investigated your family, your businesses, your assets. And I found something very interesting." He nodded to his lawyers, who began projecting documents on the screens. "The Harris estate, this beautiful property where we are standing, is mortgaged to Bennett Bank. I bought that mortgage 6 months ago. In other words, you are living on my property." Mr. Albert's face went gray. "Harris Enterprises, your company, I have been quietly buying shares through several entities. As of today, I own 68%. I am the majority shareholder. I suppose you work for me now." The screens showed stock certificates and purchase contracts signed by my father. "And you, Mrs. Harris, your family trust that funds your trips and parties is managed by Bennett Financial Group. I froze it 10 minutes ago." Mrs. Harris made a strangled noise. "And you, Victoria," my father continued, looking at the young woman still on the floor, "those fancy boutiques you brag about are built on land owned by Bennett Real Estate Holdings. Your lease agreements end tonight at midnight, payable in cash. This cannot be legal." Mr. Albert shouted. "It is legal," my father interrupted. "And it is. Everything is in order, everything is documented. I did not build an empire of about $50 billion in assets by being naive. I built it by being meticulous. When someone threatens what I love, I do not get angry. I act." He turned toward the crowd, looking at the 200 people who had witnessed my humiliation. "Let this be a lesson," he said. "That woman you mocked, the one you called a gold digger, has more class, more wealth, and more integrity than all of you combined. She chose to live modestly in search of real love, and instead, she found snakes dressed in expensive clothes." The ballroom went silent. The Harris family has lost everything tonight: their home, their company, their fortune, their reputation, and all because of their own actions. You could have treated my daughter with a bit of decency, but you chose cruelty and humiliation. You stripped her in front of everyone, and not one of you had the courage to stop them. Some lowered their heads in shame, others simply avoided his eyes. My father motioned to Detective Robert Collins. "And now," he said, "unless you want to face charges for assault, theft, conspiracy, and fraud, I suggest you start packing. You have 30 days to vacate my property." Mrs. Harris collapsed to her knees, her designer gown spread across the floor like a puddle. "Please, Mr. Bennett, We didn't know. We're so sorry. We'll do whatever it takes. Please, don't do this. My father looked down at her with contempt. Did you show mercy when you stripped my daughter? Did you stop when she begged you to? You made your choices, Mrs. Harris. Now live with the consequences. Daniel managed to push through the crowd, desperate. Sophia, please, you have to help us. Tell your father to stop. I love you, you know I love you. I looked at him in silence. This was the man I had loved for 2 years, the man I built a life with, the man I defended even when he never defended me. Do you really love me? I asked softly. Yes, of course I do. Please, believe me. Then why didn't you stop them? My voice was steady, clear. Why didn't you say anything when they accused me? When they stripped me? When they threw me out? You just stood there, silent. You turned your back and walked away. I was in shock. I didn't know what to do. Yes, you did, I interrupted. You made a choice. You chose them over me. You chose their approval over my dignity. You chose to be a coward. Sophia, please. I'm filing for divorce, I said. The words came easier than I expected. Tomorrow morning. And I won't take anything from you, not your money, not your property, nothing. Because I never needed your wealth. I only needed you by my side. And you couldn't even give me that. Please don't say that, we can work through this. The saddest part, I continued, isn't what your family did to me. It's that you allowed it. Every insult, every humiliation, every cruel word over these 2 years, and all you ever told me was to be patient, to understand them. You never stopped them. You never protected me. That's not love, Daniel. That's cowardice disguised as convenience. He cried, real tears rolling down his face. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'll change. Please, don't leave me. I stepped back, closer to my father. I already left you, Daniel. The moment you turned your back on me tonight, you lost me forever. That night, when Daniel turned away from me, he lost everything. My father's lawyers stepped forward with documents in hand. Divorce papers, Mrs. Harris, or rather, Miss Bennett. Ready for your signature? I took the pen and signed without hesitation. 2 years of marriage ended with a single stroke. Daniel fell to his knees, but inside me there was only relief. 6 months passed. The Harris family lost everything, exactly as my father had promised. Their estate was seized and auctioned off. Mr. Albert Harris's company went bankrupt in 3 months. Mrs. Harris, who had never worked a single day in her life, ended up as a saleswoman in a department store. Victoria's boutiques closed, and she got a job at a shopping mall. Daniel lost his luxury car dealership and worked in regular sales. Their high society friends abandoned them immediately. That's how people in that world are, they're your friends only while you have something to offer. As for me, I became who I truly was again, Sophia Bennett, Vice President of Bennett Global Corporation. I worked alongside my father, learned the business from within, and discovered I was actually good at it. I founded an organization, the Freedom Wings Foundation, dedicated to helping women escape toxic relationships, giving them strength and resources to start over. With the money I earned on my own, I bought my own penthouse. I traveled, made real friends, and little by little, healed the wounds of that night. 6 months later, I was hosting a charity gala for my foundation. It was a beautiful event filled with people who genuinely wanted to help. As I greeted guests, I noticed one of the cloakroom attendants. She looked familiar. It was Mrs. Harris. Our eyes met from across the room. She looked different, older, tired, without arrogance. There was no trace of the pride or cruelty that once defined her. Now she was just a woman who had lost everything because of her own choices. She approached slowly, hesitantly. "Sophia," she said, her voice trembling, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I know it doesn't mean much now, but I truly am sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. 6 months ago, I would have felt satisfaction seeing her like this. Now I only felt tired. "I forgive you, Mrs. Harris," I said. The words even surprised me, but they were sincere. "I'm not doing it for you, I'm doing it for me. To let go and move on." She began to cry. Thank you so much." "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting," I continued. "What you and your family did taught me something important. Family isn't always about blood. It's about who stands with you when everything falls apart. My father showed me what real love, protection, loyalty, and strength look like. Your son couldn't give me any of that." Mrs. Harris nodded, wiping her tears. "I understand. I hope you find happiness, Sophia. Real happiness. You deserve it." I watched her walk back toward the cloakroom and felt something lift off my shoulders. I had carried anger and pain for too long. Letting it go felt like breathing for the first time in months. A few minutes later, my father approached me. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" "Yes, Dad," I smiled. "I really am." "I'm proud of you," he said, wrapping his arm around me. "For rising above it all, for moving forward, for being strong." "I learned from the best," I replied. That night, as I watched the women my foundation was helping rebuild their lives, I realized something. The Harises thought they were punishing me by treating me as if I were worthless, but in reality, they freed me. They showed me exactly what I never wanted to become. They helped me find my strength and pushed me toward the life I was always meant to have. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are blessings in disguise. Sometimes you have to shatter completely before you can rebuild yourself stronger. I had walked into that anniversary party 2 years ago seeking approval from people who would never give it to me. I walked out as someone who no longer needed anyone's approval. That was the real revenge, not the fall of the Harris Empire, though that was satisfying, but my life thriving without them, happy without their validation, and successful on my own terms. They thought that night they were stripping me of my dignity. In truth, they stripped away the last illusion I had about who they were. They did me a favor. I am Sophia Bennett. I am the daughter of Mr. Richard Bennett. I am enough. I always was. And I will never again allow anyone to make me feel less. Sometimes people treat you badly because they think you have no power. They never imagined that I didn't need to prove my worth, I always had it. My father taught me that true power isn't in money or revenge, but in knowing who you are and never letting anyone make you feel less. That night, I walked into that party as a woman they thought they could break. I walked out as myself, stronger, wiser, and finally free. If this story moved you, give it a like and subscribe for more real stories of justice and redemption. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their worth today. Comment below and tell me, has anyone ever underestimated you and later regretted it? I read every comment. Remember, you are enough, exactly as you are. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. I'm Sophia, until next time, reminding you never to let anyone dim your light.